Hello and welcome to the Nerdosphere. Tonight we've got a extra special podcast for you. We're going to be discussing the show all about MMA, Kingdom. And we have the show's creator, Byron Balasco, on with us this evening. Byron, thanks for being with us.
Very nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we thought we would keep this light and fun. And Corbin had a really fun idea that we thought we'd kick the podcast off with.
All right.
And we'll talk about Kingdom a lot, guys. Kingdom is a show. I've had to explain it to people as a show. What I would say is a show about a broken, dysfunctional family. And there's also MMA happening in the background.
Yeah.
I think that's for me, that's the best way to explain the show. I know some people are a little skittish when they say, oh, it's an MMA show.
Mhm.
It's so much more than that. But because it's an MMA show, we thought it'd be fun to start with if anybody has a good fight story. Clayton, you said you had a good fight story.
Well, I don't have a good one, but I have one. My only fight story. So this would have been... it had to have been freshman year of high school. And Tim, I don't know if you remember Ryan McDonald, but
Yeah. I remember Ryan.
he was a good friend of mine because we went to the same church. Our dads were co-pastors at the same church growing up. And so there was an elementary school that was just like a block away from where we lived. And we'd just walk around. And it's weird to talk about that because even just 25 years ago, we were walking down neighborhoods and stuff without parents, but it seems like nobody does that anymore. At least I don't let my kids do that. But
you die in 5 minutes if you
right. Yeah. So we're
Child
walking.
Protective Services is called
yeah.
instantly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're walking down to the elementary school, just chilling, and there's these couple other kids that we've never seen before, like playing on the back playground, and they start mouthing, and my buddy Ryan starts mouthing them. He's a talker, he's a jokester, like class clown type. So he just like mouthing these kids, and they start getting into an actual fight, and Ryan gets destroyed.
Ryan is not a fighter.
No,
He is not
he
a
gets
fighter.
destroyed. He gets like pushed to the ground. His back's getting beat, and then the kid like gets up and runs off, and then Ryan stands up and he goes, I had him right where I wanted him. And then he goes, how come you didn't help out? And I go, what do you mean? What do you mean, how am I not gonna jump in this fight?
But seriously, why didn't you help out?
Yeah, it's your boy.
Yeah, that's some bad
Because
road trips, right?
it would
I know not to ride with Clayton.
I don't
You just
know.
watch
Yeah.
him get destroyed. You
Like,
say,
oh man, that sucks.
I mean, it wasn't like
probably
he wasn't
rooting for it.
bleeding. When I say
Kick
destroyed, I
him.
mean
right.
he got pushed to the ground.
Like you were admiring the ass with him.
Your buddy's like, who's pulling my hair? And you got like a clump of hair in your hand. You're like, oh,
That wasn't me.
man.
That's the closest I've ever been to a fight.
Byron, you have any good fight stories for us?
Well, I got one that it was almost a fight that was broken up, but it's a good story. So I was in Las Vegas with my brother. I have a younger brother, very close. And we had a few drinks, as you do in Vegas, and we're playing blackjack. And my brother's had more than I'm watching him because I'm like, all right, we're getting to the dangerous part of the evening. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
your brother's had a few too many, and you're not exactly all there. So we're playing. The music in the casino was Rod Stewart, just playing in the background or whatever. And we never talk about Rod Stewart. Rod Stewart doesn't come up in our lives very often. But my brother just is talking to the demon. He's like, man, what the hell happened to Rod Stewart? Rod Stewart sucks now. Like, Rod Stewart used to sound pretty good, and now he sucks. And my brother's going on and on about this. And I'm noticing out of the corner of my eye at the next table, a young man and a woman alone at the table. And he's looking over at us. And my brother keeps railing on about Rod Stewart. And this starts getting more and more pissed off. Finally, the dude jumps up and charges our table, charges my brother and grabs him.
Oh.
So I jump up, grab him, and then they split us up. It was Rod Stewart's son.
Oh my
Oh
gosh.
no! What?
It's sitting there as the one time we've ever talked about Rod Stewart in our lives. And,
That should never happen. Like the odds of you sitting next to Rod
Unreal.
Stewart's son
Yeah,
at
it was
Vegas while
unbelievable.
railing on Rod Stewart.
Yeah, it was nuts.
Holy cow.
No, that was a
Oh.
near fight. It wasn't a full fight.
That's still the best story. I don't think I could top that. My first fight, typical bully situation in school. Well, I say typical, it's like you said, Clayton. It's so atypical now, but back then, open bullying in my school, teachers just kind of laughed it off, like, hey, that's boys being boys, you know.
Right.
This kid's like bullying me for like 2 straight months, and we set the date. We're gonna meet in the parking lot, or in the park. It was in the parking lot. It was gonna be at like 3:45. School got out at like 3:30. It was gonna happen. So the whole day I feel sick to my stomach because I'm not a fighter. And I'm sitting
What
out
have I done?
there, and the kid never shows, right? So then the next day I come back, and he tells everybody that I didn't show, and they all believe him. And so I'm like, I'm beyond mad. And I'm telling, I have an older brother. He's 7 years older than me. And so I'm telling that, and he goes, no, fuck that shit. Get in my car. So I hop in his Honda Accord. This is like when the Fast and Furious was out, like maybe right before that. So everybody had like the souped out Hondas. So he's got the souped out Honda with the bass and the ridiculous muffler. And we go to the playground, and he just yells out the window, hey, does anybody know where this kid lives? And one of the kids goes, I do. He goes, take us to him. So this kid's riding his bike. My brother's following him in the car. I have no idea what's going on. He goes, all right, here's what you're going to do. You're going to knock on the door. And when he opens the door, you're going to punch him in the face. And there's all of these kids from the school that are sitting in this guy's front yard waiting for this to happen. And in the meantime, his dad is loading up this ridiculously sized van. Like they're clearly about to go on some massive road trip. So the dad's running in and out of the house. And I go up there, and I'm like in my skittish 12-year-old voice, is Dan home? It's like, yeah, Dan's home. Just go knock on the door. And so I knock on the door, and Dan opens the door, and I punched him right in the face. And then I froze. I had no idea what to do. I punched him. He falls down. The dad's looking at me. I'm looking at the kid. My brother starts yelling, well, kick his ass. What are you doing? So I'm in this guy's house, like on top of him, punching him. And by punching him, it's like a 12-year-old, like, you know, it's not a real fight. The dad comes to break it up. My brother comes to break it up. And the funniest part about it all is my brother told the dad, he's like, hey, you know, your kid's been trying to bully my brother for like 2 months, and he keeps dodging the fight. And then the dad goes and grabs the kid by the ear and walks him off to the bedroom, and he's yelling at him about wussing out for the fight. He's like, how are you going to challenge a kid to a fight and then wuss out? You deserve to get your ass kicked in front of all these kids.
Oh, jeez.
That's my one real fight story.
Dad of the year. Damn.
But I learned like that set me up all through middle school and high school, because they're like, hey, Tim's that kid. He's crazy. He'll come knock on your door and punch
He'll
you.
go
in
to
the
your
face.
house, man. He'll find you.
So
Track
like,
you
Never
down.
mess with Tim
you
again.
ever have a parent that, you know, you have a kid that's getting bullied? I'm not saying you should do that, but it is effective. Totally effective.
Prison rules, man. You got to kick somebody's ass the first day in prison.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
True.
We learned that from Keith in the show.
That's right.
Yeah. Everything changes once they know you're a badass.
Yeah.
So Byron, thanks for taking time to meet with us. I kind of teased this before, but Kingdom is a show that was on Audience Network, DirectTV, and I believe it had a run time from 2014 through 2017. And it's 3 seasons, guys, but it really is 4 seasons because season 2's 20 episodes long. And it is legitimately one of the best shows that I've seen in the past couple of years. I stumbled on it kind of by accident. I'm on a ton of Netflix fan forums where people are throwing recommendations out for the podcast. That's where I get a lot of advice on, okay, people are talking about this. Let's go and watch it. We can review it. We can maybe reach out to an actor or a director. And all of a sudden July hits, and tens of thousands of people are talking about this show that was canceled in 2017 called Kingdom. And I dove in by myself initially because my wife's not a huge fan of MMA. It's just not her cup of tea. But we found pretty quickly, like I said earlier, it's really a show at its core about a dysfunctional family that has MMA in the background. And like I said, it's one of the best things I've seen. So first off, just congrats on creating something that has sustained this long. I mean, not many shows can have a 3-year gap and people are still raving about it. So, I mean, that's got to feel pretty surreal to hear that.
Yeah, thank you for saying all of that. Thanks for finding it and watching it. Yeah, it's that was one thing that I was when I found out that they'd made a deal to put it on Netflix. I did suddenly have a moment of like, because I hadn't watched it in a few years, in a while for a number of reasons, and I was like, God, I wonder if it's still is. I wonder if I still feel about it the way that I did. And so I watched it, and it held up. I was happy. I was glad. And in fact, having some distance from it, all the little flaws in the show that you see when you're making it, or what happened that day on set, and why this had to happen, and that all the things that drive you crazy when you're trying to make something, you just kind of fall away and you can just enjoy it. So it's been really nice.
That's great. Yeah, that was a question I had for you is as you look back at it, is it something that holds up in your eyes? Is it something that you hate? I know I've talked to some creators that get a few years removed and they're like, I don't know why this is popular because I hate it. And then the opposite. So I'm glad to hear that it's something that you still love after all these years.
Yeah, I still love it. And it was just we had so much fun and freedom making it. We were really, sort of the deal was we'll make it for pretty cheap, but you got to leave us alone. So, I never really had to deal with network notes or anything like that. And the cast was so all in on all of it. And we just had a blast making it. And, a lot of life happened for all of us in real life happened for all of us during the time we made that show. So it's a lot of awesome memories, and it's really gratifying that it's finding an audience now.
It's great. Byron, can you maybe take a step backwards to the beginning and where you found your inspiration for Kingdom and how it became what it ultimately was?
Sure. Um, I had been a fan of MMA for a long, long, long time, like way back in the sort of unregulated days when, there were no weight classes and you could almost do anything except poke somebody's eyes out, uh, where you'd have to go to Blockbuster and find a tape of it next to Faces of Death.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's kind of what it was all about. And just fascinated by the people that chose to do it. You know what I mean? Because they would come from all different walks of life, and it was sort of pre-internet, so you really didn't have a lot of information on them. And so I was always just interested in it. And then later in life, college, move out to LA, become a writer, and I'd always wanted to do a show set in that world. But every time I would bring up the idea, people's eyes would kind of glaze over, or they would just assume, I mean, understandably, that it was going to be like a lowbrow kind of, B movie type of deal, because that's kind of all that had ever been done with it before.
Sure.
And it was gaining traction, but it was nothing like it is now. So, this has been it had been in my head for years. And then I was driving down Vine, which is a street out here near my house, and there's billboards for TV shows all over the place out here. And I just thought, like, man, if I drove past a billboard advertising an MMA show coming out and I didn't write it, I'm gonna fucking shoot myself in the face. So I went home and just started working on it. And it took me a while to figure out what story I was trying to tell. And then I just sort of hit on that it was a family drama, and so I wrote the pilot. It was originally called Navy Street for a long time, and then my agent sent it around. Had a lot of people really loved the script, but I think they were afraid, programming it. They were just felt like it was a little niche or whatever. And I was shooting a pilot for Warner Brothers at the time that had just sort of turned into a disaster. It was a network show. I was miserable. It wasn't the show I was trying to make. And I thought it was about to go to series. And so we're sitting there. I'm with the producers of that show, waiting to get a call, like, are we going to New York for the upfronts? And then this other studio called me and said, hey, that I had been working with, they had optioned Navy Street. Anyway, they said, "Hey, DirectTV wants to go straight to series," and I'm like, "Fuck! I think I have to do this show, this dumb show
Yeah.
picked up," and then it didn't. And then then I had to call all the actors on that show and be like, "Yeah, tough news, man. We're not making the show." And but really, I was thrilled. And so after that, went straight into making Kingdom. And
Nice.
so and they picked it up straight to series, and that's kind of how we did it.
What triggered the name change?
They really didn't give me. They let me do whatever I wanted mostly, but this is one thing they really like dug their heels in on. And this is gonna sound so stupid, and it is, but they were like, "We're kind of afraid that if we market this as Navy Street, people are gonna think it's a show that involves the Navy." And I was just like, ugh. I mean, it's too stupid to even argue. And
Right.
you know what? I got a lot of other hills to die on when I
Right.
make the show, so I'll give them this one, and so change the name.
Gotcha.
Yeah, happens all the time.
The little things.
Yeah.
What was it? Go ahead.
I was gonna say, so Byron, when you were initially writing the show, was there any sort of like evolution with some of the characters that you didn't anticipate? Maybe when an actor brought to life, or as you're writing it, you were like, you know what, this show really is going to focus a lot more on Jay than I anticipated. Because when I came into the show, especially from the pilot and stuff, it definitely seems like Nate's being set up to be kind of like the main show's protagonist, and you have the side stuff going on with Ryan. And Jay to me seemed more like a third wheel. But as the show kind of went on, it really kind of, at least for me as a viewer, really became more so about Jay than anyone. And I don't know if that's just because, Jonathan Tucker just like deserved an Emmy for that role.
Absolutely.
But I was just curious if that.
It's a little bit like you have in mind what the show is going to be. Then you cast it, and you just start seeing what the actors bring to it.
Right.
And you start seeing where the characters and the story take you. So, it would kind of ebb and flow with characters. And I think this was an ensemble. I mean, Frank was the lead, and then, but all of these characters, I really fell in love with them, and so I really wanted to make each one of their stories interesting on their own, and then each one of them have a different relationship with the other character that was completely specific to the two of them when they were together. So yes, I mean, it's sort of, to answer your question, yeah, you're surprised by things, and that dictates what you start writing, and you start finding the voices and all of that. But there's no major, I kind of wanted everybody in it as much as they are in it.
Yeah.
With the exception of Keith, played by Paul Walter Hauser. He was supposed to only have like 2 lines in the pilot, and his first day of work was the actual first shooting day of the entire show. And we were shooting a scene. It was like the scene where he wrecks his room, like he just starts destroying his room.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was like, God, this kid is awesome. And he had such an interesting dynamic with Matt Lauria's character, Ryan Wheeler. So I decided, like, this guy's staying in the show, and he's going to be in the show the whole way. And obviously, I was smart because he's gone on to be a big star and all that kind of stuff.
That's awesome, because I would text Tim periodically as I watched it, because Tim really nagged at us to watch the show. And for those who do listen to this podcast, like I'm not a huge like sports fan in any regard. So when it comes to like television and film, it usually takes a little bit of coaxing for me to even like give it a chance.
Sure.
So when he was telling me like it was, at first I saw it and I was like, it's an MMA show. Like this really isn't like in my wheelhouse of interest. And he's like, no, it's about dysfunctional family or whatever. And it was the characters that it gripped me and drew me in, and I couldn't stop watching it once I started. But Keith was the one that was probably my like standout character. I would always text Tim after a scene with him, and I was like, I just can't get over Keith. Like he's so fucking good.
Yeah, he's awesome. And they all were awesome. And we really told really personal storylines that we brought a lot of our own lives into the show. So yeah, I think it just, there was a little bit of, maybe part of it because of the nature of the fighting and everything, where, a lot of the guys, they trained really hard, and so they would compete really hard, and nobody wanted to sort of be the weakest link. And then that also translated in with our female cast too. So everybody really showed up and like brought the shit every day. So it was good.
Yeah, that was a question I had for you. So we've got, I mean, Clayton or Corbin just said it. Several people should have been nominated for an Emmy. Like, I'm convinced that Jonathan Tucker should have been nominated, that Frank should have been nominated. I mean, you have standout after standout in that show. Who was the most intense person to work with?
Just straight intense to work with is probably Frank. Frank's, I mean, I love him. We're great friends, but he can be a pretty intense dude. So Frank, yeah. But they're all intense in their own way, but they're all incredibly sweet too. You know what I mean? Like we're all close and we're all friends outside of it. I had dinner with Tucker last night. So we're all, we're all still close. So nobody was like intense, like you can't approach them. But you also know, hey, we're shooting this kind of scene today. It's just one of these things.
Yeah.
Like, stand back.
I saw an interview with Frank talking about his relationship with Jonathan Tucker. And he said in that interview that during their time recording, he was intentional to not have a strong relationship with him because he wanted the character, he wanted that conflict and that tension to be seen on screen. And like you said, now he said, we're great friends. We talk all the time, but he took his role that seriously, that he was careful with who he created relationships with.
Definitely. Yeah. Tucker as well. They definitely kind of circled each other in an interesting way, but I think I really added to the relationship on screen.
Absolutely. So what was it like, or what led you to decide that Nick Jonas was a good fit to play Nate? Because I think from everybody who I've talked to, when I'm trying to get them to bite and I say, Nick Jonas is in it, like the reaction I get is crazy. They're like, Nick Jonas is in an MMA show?
Well,
not to mention the time period it came out in. So like, again, I didn't realize how old the show was which is also a testament to how well it stands up when Tim told me to watch it. And so I was like, oh, well, Nick Jonas is in it. Okay. Like he's definitely like, trying to do the acting circuit and stuff. So that's how I came into it, thinking that this is current Nick Jonas, but no, this is, what was it? 2004 Nick Jonas? Like
2014. Yeah.
2014.
Yeah. It's a good story. So I'm doing a show about MMA. They're a pretty proud culture, if you will. I'd done a lot of time getting this world right. Like I had been in Albuquerque with Greg Jackson for 2 weeks and like, really diving in, knowing all the fighters, being in the gyms, cultivating those relationships. Cause the biggest thing I wanted to do was honor these men and women that fight, It's because I'm going into their world. And so I was in it. And so then we start casting and Jonas's agency calls and is like, hey, Nick wants to read. Nick Jonas wants to read. And I'm like, no. You know why? Because here's the deal. I'm making an MMA show. They're already going to have the knives out for me, the MMA world, because they're going to they're going to just assume I'm fucking it up.
Right.
Then the headline's going to be new MMA show starring Nick Jonas. And you're dead. You're already dead.
Right.
So I kept saying no, they kept badgering me. And then finally I hadn't found Nate. And I was like, okay, all right, he can come in and read. So he comes in, and as soon as he walked in, I was like, oh, I guess I don't know who this guy is. I realized I didn't actually know who he was. I just knew the band.
Right.
Yep. You have like the teeny bopper version of him in your mind.
Demographic, obviously. So it's not like I had listened to him. I just knew them as a sentient person, that they were a famous band. But the band had broken up. So Nick was in a very strange place where he was sort of post original Jonas Brothers. His solo career hadn't started. So he was really at a crossroads. And as soon as he came in, there was just something about him. He's got this he's quiet. He's very sweet, and there's like this internal goodness to him. You know what I mean? But he holds it in. So anyway, he read. I'm like, this guy's good. I'm still not doing it, but he's good. He came back and read a second time, and I'm like, I feel myself going down this road, and I'm like, guys, I'm really not doing it. I'm not casting him. And then he came in and read with Frank, and they were just like fucking electric. And I was just like, God, man, I don't know what's gonna happen, but he's far and away the best dude for this. And I'm already like writing for the guy right now as we're sitting in this room just thinking about it. and so I cast him. So I did it, and he turned out to be. This is a time where I was glad I went against my initial instinct and hired him, because he was so good. He's a really talented actor. He was perfect for that role, and he's got, there's a reason the dude's a star. You know what I mean? Like he's got that thing that you really can't put your finger on. And he just did his work and was Nate. And, of course, as the show was going, he started putting out some solo singles, and then all of a sudden that started blowing up. And then the next thing he's a superstar. But I mean, I love the kid, and I'm so grateful I cast him, because now it's just, you can't even imagine somebody else playing that part. And I think the Jonas Brother thing vanishes once you start watching the show.
100%.
Yeah,
it definitely does. It does. And really, I mean, Nate kind of becomes the heart and soul of the show as it goes on. Like, he is probably the most consistent character that you wrote. Yeah. Everybody else has real high highs and really low lows, but Nate was always pretty even keeled throughout the entire show.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
So I mentioned earlier that Kingdom went for 3, I'd argue 4 seasons, right? Because
I always call it 4 seasons. The reason that it's like that is because, again, we were making the show on a shoestring. So the studio decided, well, we do 10 episode seasons, but let's shoot 20 episodes together on the same production cycle. That way we don't have to give everybody their yearly raises that you get for doing another production cycle. So I ended up writing 20 scripts in 9 months and almost shingles at the end of it.
Holy shit.
But then of course it aired as 4 seasons, 4 10-episode seasons. So I always say 4 seasons, but technically they have to.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that was
Netflix
actually
has it as 3.
Yeah. That was going to be one of my questions as to why the second season was, like, behind the scenes. What would have been the reason why? So
studio bullshit, that's all it was.
Yeah. Because it was, like you said, I was looking at release dates too, and there's a nice chunk. It was like a fall and like a summer season, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly. So
we have 4 seasons of Kingdom.
Yeah.
And talk to me about the process of finding out my show's been renewed or it's been canceled, and what that looks like behind the scenes. I know all of us have a show that we absolutely love that's been canceled, but I don't think many of us know what's going on behind the scenes that's driving those decisions.
Yeah. Well, look, a lot of times you don't find out until way later than you wish you were finding out. But we always knew kind of we were coming back. So there was never like, we knew we were coming back for season 2, like at the beginning of season 1, because that's what made more sense financially. And we just, we'd been told that. And so we just believed that's what was going to happen. Well, in fact, they told me after midway through season 1, they surprised me with like, we're giving you a 2-season pickup. And so I was like, oh shit, that's great. And then they start suddenly talking about it as one big season. Anyway, so so we would always find out early, and that was good. What happened in the last season was everybody's deals were kind of up. So what has to happen is you have to make new deals with me, you have to make new deals with the actors, and then the studio and the network have to make a new deal between themselves. And that's where shit can get tricky. And I think a lot of times that's why shows die, is because of a business dispute between the studio and a network versus ratings or quality or something like that. So both of these companies were going through mergers in various ways. DirectTV with AT&T and Endemol with Shine, and then now they've been purchased by some French company, whatever. So there's a lot of bigger business stuff going on. So, but anyway, we shot the last episode that you guys saw, what is now the season finale. But we're told as we were shooting that, like, we're good to go. We're coming back. Everybody's deal's been made.
And this is for season 4 at the time.
Yeah. So
okay.
We thought we were coming. I mean, we were told we were coming back. We had new deals all in place and everything. So yeah, it was just one day I was walking out of the gym with my wife, who plays Shelby on the show. She plays the
oh, right on.
Yeah. And got a call from the head of DirectTV, who was like, poor guy was like in tears, but he was like, they couldn't make a deal with the studio. They just had a business dispute with the studio, and
Dang.
you know, that was it. So it was kind of like, hey man, what can you do? There's nothing, you know, sort of above all of us, you know, even above the head of the network's pay grade. This is like, you know, New York.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, this is billions of dollars changing hands and acquisitions. This is very different.
Yeah.
Man, that's heartbreaking though.
Yeah, it was tough, man, because I remember Frank, I called Frank, and he tells a story of like when I called him, he was pulling up to meet his wife, who was standing in front of the house they just bought, on the phone, and he was going literally to get the keys to open his new house for the first time.
Oh, dang.
He got out of the car on the phone, and his wife thought, like, what happened? Did your parents die? He's like, the show's canceled. So anyway, everybody was bummed, but you know, we walked away like we made the show we wanted to make. So that was it.
So a big kind of pigging off of that, the big next question is, in the current environment with so many places for shows to go, are you thinking about maybe trying to get the show, shop the show around, bring it back somewhere, or have you even ever thought of?
Yeah, I mean, the reason it took so long to get on Netflix in the first place was because the rights were, again, tied up in this weird business purgatory where we couldn't go to any streaming service. It was strange. But, you know, to do more of the show, it would have to be something, I think, like Netflix saying, hey, we want to make another season. You know, they haven't said that, you know, there's no discussion of that. There's a lot of, I get hit up by fans constantly asking me that. It'd be cool. I know, like, we'd all be down to do it. I know the cast would be down to do it. It would have its own complications because everybody's scattered. You know,
right,
I'm in a deal at another studio, so that you'd have to work that out somehow. But if people want things to happen, there's always a way. So the best chance for that to happen would be Netflix wanting to make another season. As far as like taking the show and shopping it around, I don't think it's realistic, because, you know, that's not very feasible. And I would never make the show with, like, I would never reboot the show with different cast or anything.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I know. I saw an interview you guys did about a month ago with, I think it was Entertainment Weekly.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a real testament to what you guys built, where the entire cast is together, and the question came up and everybody said, absolutely. Like, there's no hesitation. And I just don't imagine you see that very often in Hollywood, where people are so eager to go back to the roles.
Yeah. And also, when you're making a show, I mean, you're in each other's face, like, more than your own family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's your life. And, you know, everybody's got a personality, everybody's got a point of view. So usually by the end of a show, everybody's like, pleasure working with you. I hope I never fucking see you.
Add in the layer that they're actually fighting each other on the show too. So that just like makes it even more explosive.
But I think everybody, like, we had it was a special little, like, pod that we were able to create in, that it's not like other shows that we've all done, you know, just in terms of the freedom. You know, everybody, we were all kind of roughly around the same age and going through similar things in life. So it was just like a moment in time, you know, that it'd be fun to go back and visit, but, you know, not all shows you want to do that with.
Gotcha.
Absolutely. So for our listeners right now, I'm hoping we can kind of switch gears and maybe get into some spoiler territory.
Sure.
So for anybody who's listening right now, if you have not watched Kingdom or you haven't finished it yet, what are you doing? Stop what you're doing right now. Go to Netflix, watch Kingdom. It's going to be one of the best decisions you make this year on something to watch. I promise you that. But for everybody else, let's talk about some of the creative decisions that went on throughout the show that really shaped the outcome of how people felt with the show. So for me, the first big heart-wrenching moment that was jaw on the floor was the season 2 finale, where Ava is killed by the next door neighbor at the motel.
Mhm.
Can you talk us through what that thought process was, or how you came to the decision that we needed to shake Jay's life up so significantly?
Yeah.
Or was it a decision to try to almost right the ship? Because I was honestly watching it, it was happy. I was happy to see Jay happy, but I
Mhm.
was getting so frustrated as he was going down this road of addiction that he preached so highly at his mom to go against,
Yeah.
that honestly, like, Ava's death was brutal and I cried, but a voice in the back of my head was like, maybe this can be a wake up call and get like Jay back on the straight and narrow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that Jay is just such a magnet for pain and you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
I think it follows him, but I also think he seeks it out in ways he's not really realizing. You know what I mean? He puts his faith and his devotion into people that don't always deserve it. And it's just the nature of Jay's life that these are the kind of things he would have to overcome, you know. And I wanted to put Jay in a position where um, how hard is he going to fight? You know what I mean? Like, what is his breaking point? Does he have a breaking point, or is he just somebody that has to keep walking forward in life one way or another? You know. So
Yeah.
um, that was kind of what that was. You know.
Yeah, and we see the answer to that play out in the beginning of season 3 on Netflix, and I guess this would be season 4
Mhm.
in real time. But you see about a year gap from the end of season 3 or season 2 if you're on Netflix to Jay trying to live a normal life, and you
Yeah.
see him fighting, but you ultimately see him succumb to his old ways,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I thought was very fitting for the character because he seemed to always be this roller coaster where
Yeah.
he's like 100% committed to fighting and then he's 100% committed to throwing his life away.
Yeah, I think he probably feels like he's unworthy of the good and normal things in life, you know, or unworthy of peace and happiness, you know.
Yeah,
He can't be comfortable there because he's never known it.
absolutely. Um, I think I can speak for all of us. The most shocking moment, and I know you've heard this from a lot of people, was episode 9 of season 4, and that would be Nick Jonas's death.
Yeah.
Was this a situation where you had to write a character? I know you'd mentioned contracts start expiring and Nick Jonas is at this point in his career, he's just blowing up and becoming a superstar. Was this a creative decision because Nick Jonas's availability, or was this something that you kind of always had in your mind as you were writing this this tragic story?
Little bit of both. I mean, you know, one thing, if you've been doing this long enough, you've been told things that turned out to not be true. So I have been told there's going to be another, you know, another season, and then it's not. You know, that's just
Sure.
the nature of Hollywood. Things change. So always in the back of your mind, you just got to kind of feel your intuition. And if you have some story you really want to get to, like, tomorrow's not promised, so you better do it, you know. And I knew that I wanted this. I didn't want it to happen because, quite frankly, it was really emotional to even do, which is strange because I don't really get too emotional about that stuff because you're making it, so it's like
It's different.
yeah, exactly. I mean, you're seeing all the pulleys and levers, and that's where the lights are going and all that shit. But this one was always like, you know, he's a sweet soul, you know, and you just and but there had to be there had to be some real pain, real consequences for Albie in life. And I wanted the idea from Albie's point of view on that was that like you don't get like the next second isn't promised to you. So you better understand who's important to you, who you love, and you better make sure they know it, because everybody always says that thing of like, I just wish I could have had one more conversation. I wish I could have done that. And I'm like, well, in Albie's world, that needs to be extremely visceral and turned up to 10. And, you know, this whole family has been fighting their whole lives. And there's this feeling, that sort of cage mentality of the last man standing, but it comes at a major cost. And Albie needed to feel that, I think, for the show to fulfill its promise or its ethos or whatever you want to call it. So we did it, and it was hard to do. I'm really proud of the way it came out. You know, I mean, the way that episode went, and then how it led into the next one. I mean, it definitely feels like the series can end. You know, it feels like a series finale if it needs to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that is the silver lining for the show, is the way that season 4 ended works as an ending for a series, even though I would have loved to have seen maybe us head into Kalina versus Wheeler round 3, or some of the other story arcs that I'm assuming you had in mind as you were writing this all down. It still was a tragic and fitting end.
Yeah, and I always try to make each season just feel like, because it's not a super plot driven show, you know, it's more character, you know, so each season really was built to just be a chapter in these people's lives that we come into, and then we leave it and come back at any other time. But I remember shooting what's the final scene of the series, where we follow Albie out of the cage, and we follow him through the crowd, then back into the locker room, and he sits down and looks right at the camera. And I remember shooting that and just going, God, I think I might have shot the end of the series. Like, that feels like the end of the series. So,
oh wow.
You know,
Dang.
but I was like, fuck it, I'll think of something else. But
but it was a perfect end.
But at least you have that kind of like that solace, right? Because like when we were kind of catching up on some of the drama with the show and stuff behind the scenes, when Tim was telling me how you guys didn't necessarily have like the heads up, like my heart kind of like felt bad for you guys. I was like, that's like kind of skeevy. Like, why can't you at least get a notice to like, hey, you have 4 episodes, wrap up the show? You know what I mean? So I guess the silver lining, like Tim said, at least you kind of felt like there was some closure there, because not every show gets that sense of closure when they're canceled.
And not every show is built to be able to do that. I mean, again, like I said, I've been around long enough that like, just because somebody tells you something's going to happen doesn't mean it's going to happen. So I was like, we're doing, in case it doesn't work out, we're going to do this shit that I've been wanting to do on the show. I'm not going to not do it. And then for whatever reason, we don't come back, and I'm pissed off because I didn't leave it all on the field for that. But our show is built to be able to do that, you know, because it's not like there's some great, plot answer that you guys didn't get or something, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Now we do have we had one question that we felt like fit our list, but a fan wrote in, and he's also a huge MMA fan and stuff, and had talked about, when it comes to fighters and stuff, it's all about the trilogy fights, and wanted to know that if you were able to have another season, were you inevitably going to have that third round between Jay and Wheeler, or are you just going to kind of let that lie?
I think you can't just, I mean, you have to complete the trilogy. You have to do it. It's not even like a unique creative choice. It's just something that has to happen, you know?
Right. I feel like we almost have to off cast just ask your creative mind on who would win in case you do get the opportunity to write it.
I'm never going to answer
that. Good man, Byron. Don't sell yourself short. I want to see it in person.
You got to buy the tickets for that.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, I'll be at the front of the line.
As I watched the show, I kind of flip-flopped on who I thought had the best acting skills.
Mhm.
And through the middle of the series, I thought it was Jonathan Tucker. I thought he was electric as Jay. Just one of the most eccentric, polarizing characters that I can remember.
Mhm.
But I've completely changed my tune after I finished watching it, and I have to go back with Alvy. And when you take and this is a huge compliment to you, you built an absolute monster of a man who also has like this really beautiful and perfect mind, is so eloquently spoken
Mhm.
and at times self-aware of what he's doing,
Yeah.
and his story arcs and the way that Frank was able to act it out
Yeah.
is, I mean, it's a masterclass.
Yeah, Frank's a phenomenal actor, and you really, you just can't. It's just everything. It all just comes out of him so elegantly. You know that you don't see any acting at all. You just see the person,
It's
and
100% convincing.
100% convincing to the point where, like, you know, he and I both talk, like, I don't know where Alvy ends and Frank begins sometimes, you know.
Mm.
But yeah, he just lived that, and um, he's awesome. He's a great actor.
Corbin and I were talking a couple of hours ago, and I think we both agree the most emotional moment in the show is before Alvy's fight when he's talking with Christina, and he
Mhm.
says, "I saw the look in his face as he died. He looked like a 6-year-old boy still." And I
I
mean,
was scared. I was starting bawling my eyes out.
if that doesn't tear you apart, you don't have a soul. I mean, it was
Yeah.
incredibly well done.
Especially if you have kids, man.
Oh,
Like, that's changed my whole. I had my first daughter, like, I was writing the series finale in the hospital when I had my first daughter, and even that, so now going back and looking at it, now I have 2 kids. I'm like, God damn, man, just so painful.
so different.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your wife was her name was Shelby in the show, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So she was actually pregnant in the show, and that was your first kid?
My first daughter. Yeah. That was
Man,
I was wondering if that pregnancy was real if you said that.
That was a real one. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
so,
incredible.
Awesome.
So I had it be Mac that knocked her up, because Mac, before the show, Mac's an old buddy. Like, he used to be the bartender at a bar that I was in every damn night, and so we met there and just been good friends for 15 years. And so when I wrote it, I was like, dude, I got a part for you. It's Mac. I'm gonna play Mac. His name's Mac in real life, and you're
perfect.
a drug dealing nurse. So I thought, like, yeah, I want him to knock up my wife.
Oh, that's too good. Byron, as you look back at the show, what are some of the most memorable scenes that you wrote?
God. Oh, you know, the actual, I don't I remember writing them for dumb reasons, you know, like the one where Ryan goes to see his dad for his first time, and his dad makes him read out of the Bible, you know, read these Bible verses.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote that at my kitchen table at like 3 o'clock in the morning because I couldn't sleep, and I could. Dog's awesome. I couldn't. so it's like weird things like that, but it was all emotional. It was all really emotional to me, you know, like the stuff with Alvy and his mom is emotional to me. It's part of my, you know, it's very close to my life in a lot of ways, and like, so all of that stuff. I mean, Jay shooting up in front of his mom was making her watch him do that was emotional. Sometimes Ryan talking about Keith in that men's group, church group thing.
Yeah.
You know, the Alvy and Lisa stuff. I mean, I'll tell you, the stuff with Lisa and losing the baby. You guys should you should look up the actress Keely Sanchez and Google that, and Hollywood Reporter article. She wrote an essay in there because she lost her baby, and so we had to deal with that. So I think that far and away is the most emotional, because I had to talk to Keely and figure out what we were going to do, and so we just wrote into it.
Wow.
And But you should
Man,
read
that's
that.
brutal.
Yeah, it was really hard. It was really hard. And she was so fucking brave and like, you know, just went there. And so that was easily the most emotional because it was a real life tragedy for her. And then, you know, me seeing my friend in pain. And also, you know,
And at the same time, your wife's pregnant, I think, at this point too, right?
coming up on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was that was a lot, but read that essay. She writes about it really beautifully. She's a great writer. But that'll give you a little perspective on that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that's brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those things we talked about early on, is sometimes these characters take a life of their own, and sometimes the actors and the actresses change the narrative. And
Yeah.
this is a perfect example of
changes the narrative. I mean, she's got 2 kids now. I lost my mom during production, so that, you know, I wrote about that. You know, it's just, that was the great thing about the show, is you could really, it had room to really bring real human drama into it. And, you know, it's like everything's up for grabs. Like, why be a writer if you can't write about that shit, you know?
yeah. Yeah.
That's probably why
Absolutely.
so many people can connect with the show too, because it's so real.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's, we always try to be specific about and not really hold back, you know, even when it was kind of ugly or uncomfortable, you know. I mean, we don't want people to be miserable watching it. We try to make it funny there too and have some laughs and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. But make it feel real. Like this is how shit happens and this is how people react. And it's not always a happy ending. It's not always a sad ending. And sometimes it just exists. You know what I mean? And it's just sometimes people learning to live with shit.
Which is why I think the ending that we got ended up being so fitting, is
Yeah.
because Frank is essentially destined to suffer at this point for how he's raised his children and the decisions he's made. And here he is at the top again. And you can tell as he stares at the camera. And you could really tell at the beginning of the episode when he's at the bar and Lisa's calling him saying, "Where are you?"
Right.
He realizes it means nothing. Like,
Yeah.
it means absolutely nothing.
Yep. Exactly.
So Byron, as we're wrapping up here, let's pivot and have a couple of more fun questions for you.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite shows or movies of all time?
Boy. All right. Movies, I'll go anywhere from Jaws to Sideways.
Okay.
You know, for some reason, I watched Sideways a million fucking times. That was one of those movies that I think hit me at a certain point in life, and I saw in the movie theater. I think I just broken. I was in my, you know, probably in my early 20s or mid 20s, and I'd just broken up with a girl, and I was kind of lonely in LA, and I was watching it, and I'm like, what if I turn out like Paul Giamatti? What if this happens to me? You know, so it really, like, that movie just rocked the shit out of me. TV, you know, I mean, it's going to be the classics, man. It's going to be Sopranos, Wire, Breaking Bad, Love, Matt, and current shows. Succession is an all-timer for me right now. I mean, that's really the one that I love the most. I really dug Mindhunter. I thought that was good. I tried for years to get that made as a movie when I was a young pup, because that's a real, you know,
it's a real story.
Yeah, real story. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then, you know, 15 years later, they make it into a TV show, and I thought they did a really good job. Yeah. So that's kind of,
man, it bleeds through to Kingdom for sure, because almost everything you mentioned is 100% a character study.
Yeah.
Right. It's all about how people interact with each other. And that's what you get with Kingdom.
Yeah. That's the stuff that sticks with me, but it's got to be a good one. Like a bad one, I can't fucking stand. I can't sit through it. But, like, you know, and you don't know why some movies hit you certain ways beyond the, you know, the ones that are on everybody's list, like Goodfellas and all that.
Sure.
Right.
Stuff, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's a scarier movie? Shining or The Signs?
The Sign. Well, first
Oh,
of all,
that's
there's
not-
no movie. There's
The
no
Shining
movie called
or
The
Signs.
Signs.
So there's this long debate at the Nerdosphere.
Uh-huh.
I'm not going to tell you which side I'm on, which side Corbin's on, but we've been debating which movie's scarier.
Scarier.
I haven't
The Shining or Signs?
I have not watched them in a while, or side by side. But if I'm just going off memory, I'm probably going to say, I'm going to give you a weird answer. I think Signs is probably don't hang on, buddy. Don't.
I'm just stretching. Oh man, I work at a desk and I just got to stretch.
Yeah, I think it is probably a more frightening, scary, like your pulse racing kind of movie, because it's a little more modern. There's a little bit more, but The Shining, the feeling of isolation, the losing of one's mind is more to my bone terrifying.
You are a brilliant man.
I don't know. I heard the answer I heard was Signs of Scarier. So up yours, Tim.
I mean, it kind of got both of them in there, but it's like, yeah, like I'm sure that movie startled me more, but Shining, like,
mixed with you.
Yeah, it's not fucking alien. It's real.
Exactly right. It's not a fucking alien, Corbin. Idiot. One thing that I've really loved about Kingdom is the music. Is that a lot of your choosings, or?
Yeah, myself and Pat McKinley. You'll see his name, or Patrick McKinley. You'll see his name all over it. So he was really my number one creative partner on the show. He was my editor. So he cut the pilot, and we had another editor, and I saw that cut. Nothing against this other editor, but I'm like, you're fired.
Night and day difference.
Pat is cutting everything. So I wrote every episode, Pat cut every episode, and then and then I directed, and then Pat started directing. And Pat actually directed the last two. But our music budget was shit. We had no money for it. But it worked for us because it wasn't the type of show that I don't really love big pop needle drops, because I feel like they kind of take you out of the show. It's like, oh yeah, that famous song.
Right. Yeah.
I was watching a movie. So if you'll notice, we don't really use much score at all on the show. It's all source. We call it scores because we kind of use it like score, but it's actually probably playing out of a radio in the room, or the speakers in the gym, or a car, or passing a restaurant, whatever. So because we had no money, we just looked for, a lot of our taste in music wasn't super commercial. So a lot of people we love, we could just get. But then we'd also just dig around for stuff. And Billy Gottlieb, who was our music supervisor, was a real assassin about getting good deals on stuff. But we just really started building a vibe that felt like the show, and I think ended up with some really, really great music.
Yeah, it's super killer. I got really giddy because in season 4, it was one of the last episodes, but there was a song by a group called Wildorado that played. And I had never heard of them until I went to go see Mount Joy with my girlfriend, and they opened for them. And I ended up liking Wildorado like way more than Mount Joy. But they're a small band now. So then it had even more perspective of, when the show came out. I was like, I texted him and I was like, fucking Wildorado's on this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping like a lot of these bands feel a little bit of a hit, because a lot of fans ask about the music, and we actually even threw together like a quick playlist on Spotify of not all the music we use, but just some of it. We'll probably keep adding to it. So hopefully those bands get a little love.
That's great.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Byron, I know you mentioned that you were working with the studio right now. What are you working on these days?
Well, I'm in a development deal. I got 2 scripts written and ready to go, but we're kind of all, like everybody, on pause because of COVID. We can't shoot anything. So I'm kind of waiting for that to open up, and then we'll take those out and get them set up, and hopefully get into production, soon. And then just writing, so just coming up with new ideas, new stuff.
Super exciting.
So if there's a show about anything you guys want that nobody's written, just tell me and I'll do it.
Nice.
Slide into your DMs.
Yeah.
Shoot you an email.
Yeah.
Like, Byron, I've got the next hit show.
I've got the next hit show. We have to know who wins between Kalina. I need to know who wins in Wheeler, Kalina 3. But then I'll tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
That's great.
I definitely can't let this podcast end without raising our street cred a little bit, because Tim, you skipped over me, and I have got a fight story that is actually a legit fight story. Rob. So don't at me, okay? All right, I was a senior.
For context, we got a text just a minute ago from Corbin. You bastards, my fight story was better than both of yours.
All right,
so I saw him get skipped, and he goes, as soon as he got skipped, he goes.
So it was in high school. I was a senior. I was a dweeb in high school, by the way.
Really?
But I was. Believe it or not.
Was it dweeb? I love Byron, man. He's throwing jabs already.
That's fine. I'm used to it. I'm the punching bag on this show, but it's all good. But my girlfriend that I had in high school, her ex-boyfriend was like kind of a stalker, when like drive past her house all the time, and would like actually walk into her house like while we were there. And there was one day where he was at a house party across the street, and he came over, and I was sitting on the front porch of her house, and he was drunk, and he was yelling something at me, and I was kind of ignoring him. And then he started pissing on my car.
Ooh.
And I'll have you know that 95 Oldsmobile Silhouette of a van was my baby.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I've had enough. You can walk into my girlfriend's house while she's sleeping. That's fine. But when you piss in my car, it becomes personal. And so I went down there, and we got into a tussle, and I ended up just getting him into a headlock. And he was like 3 inches taller than me. So I had like anchor up, and I pulled him down to a headlock, and I had him there. And at that point, I didn't know what else to do. I was like, in my head, I was like,
I think I'm winning.
Yeah. I was like, if I get into a headlock, I have control. But then once I had control, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. And he was like throwing punches at me and stuff. And eventually people came over and broke us up. And the end of the story is that nothing really truly came of the fight, but optically it looked like something did, because I was born without an adult tooth in my mouth. So I have a prosthetic tooth. And during the tussle, it popped off my retainer. So it looked like I lost a tooth in the fight. But he also didn't come to school the next day, because he apparently also has scoliosis. So my
you beat up a kid with scoliosis.
my headlock put him in so much pain that he couldn't come to school the next day.
So it was really just a couple of dweebs fighting each other in the street.
Yeah, exactly. With pre-existing conditions.
Was he wearing a flipping exoskeleton to straighten his back while you're beating him up?
Thank God you guys found each other, because one of you.
Oh man, it's funny how those things just kind of gravitate towards each other, though, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you instinctively knew, we'll both survive this. Let's do it.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. I imagine if it was like the big football player who was peeing on your van, you'd probably be like, "It's fine, bro." I do it too.
He was like a car bro, but yeah, if he was like actually threatening, I probably would have been like, it needed a good pissing.
Yeah. But let's not denigrate this story, dude. That's a moment of glory, and that's awesome.
Yes, congratulations.
Well done, Corbin.
Thank
you. Manly man, you.
Like I said, there's a few moments where I feel like my Viking ancestors would look proudly upon me. That's one where they probably they were like, you got him, champ.
I think they were indifferent, because they're like proud at first, and then you just kept holding the headlock and didn't know what to do. And like, seriously, where's the knees? Like, you got to throw some jabs in there.
Yeah. Well, I see it as an act of mercy. You subdued the man. And held him. Yeah.
I like the way you write, Byron.
Yeah.
Yeah, you subdued the man that had scoliosis.
I've got a hit show for you, Byron. It's about a dweeb in high school that finally finds his comeuppance in life.
That never grew an adult tooth.
Exactly. I'm spitballing names. It could be called Corbin, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's also a great voice actor. I mean, it could just go all over the place.
Yeah.
Jeez. My brother.
Byron, thanks so much for hanging out with us today.
Well, it was a pleasure, man. You guys are great. I appreciate you finding the show, watching the show, telling people about the show.
100%.
For sure.
Yeah. So awesome. Thank you guys.
Yeah, we'll keep spreading the word. Is there anything else fans can do if they want to see more Kingdom? What's the best way to support the show at right now? Is it just watching it on Netflix or
Watching it? If they want to buy some Kingdom gear, we're doing like the old shirts and then some limited edition stuff at kingdomofficial.shop.
okay?
Kingdomofficial.shop. They can go buy some gear. That's obviously always helpful. But just keep supporting the show and finish it and make Netflix realize they should want another.
Should we do some like Firefly guerrilla marketing where we make Kingdom stands and then put them in Walmart and then they don't have anything, so it looks like it's sold out?
Oh yeah, look at that.
That's what people did for Firefly. So I mean, we can do that for you too.
That's great. That's great. I like that's a very current reference too, so that you definitely have your finger on the pulse of.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Byron, you've been awesome, buddy.
Hey guys, yeah, you guys are great. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Later.
Yep. See you guys.
Yeah.
Deuces, Byron.
Yeah.
See you, Byron. Thanks, bud. Well, guys, that was flipping awesome. Do we want to say anything to wrap it up?
Yeah, go watch Kingdom.
Please go watch Kingdom. Like it again, I cannot stress this enough. I do not connect to sports stories. I do not connect with I love underdog stories, but in social settings, right? Like I don't care about like this person. There's no way he can achieve the top tier or whatever. This show is completely character driven. It is engaging. The acting and the writing is it's top tier. For me, I was hooked from episode 1 and I just fucking binged it all in a week, all 40 episodes.
I will say, talking to him, oh shoot, I need to switch my thing over for the visual. There we go. Listening to him talk about how personal some of the writing was, like, really gives me a new perspective. Like, I'm now not only excited to finish the show. Yes, I haven't finished the show, but the show was spoiled for me, so it was okay. But I'm looking forward to finishing the show. I'm looking forward to what Byron has coming next. Like, I'm gonna be watching for his name.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, he kind of mentioned this show is more of a character study than a plot-driven show. So this isn't a flash in the pan for Byron. I think Byron's going to go on and do big things because he's written convincing characters, real drama that you can feel throughout the show. I'm super pumped we got to talk to him. I mean,
Yeah,
he is a legit dude. Like he can write like nobody else.
yeah, and he's a down to earth guy, man. Had a good time talking to him.
Dude,
Hopefully
anybody who can throw a jab at Corbin.
Yeah, if you come on the show and you're jabbing with Corbin,
Yeah,
you belong here.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully he'll want to come back sometime. I mean, that was fun. I gotta say, like, I was honestly kind of nervous walking into the podcast today.
I'm glad you didn't show it like you showed it with Dagan. Good God.
Excuse you. Dagan loved that conversation. But this episode isn't about Dagan. This is about Byron. Byron, if you're still listening.
But it's always about you, Corbin. We always have to
it's
talk
always
about
me. It needs to be.
All right. Well, we should have asked them about when you brought up music. I was gonna say, speaking of music, Tangled or Frozen. We didn't ask them about the other debate,
right.
but we got talking about other stuff.
I feel like I ended with a win, so I didn't want to.
I don't think you won that answer.
I didn't want to give Corbin a chance to even.
You keep bringing it up, and Byron's the first win that you've had, because not only are you outvoted on the podcast, you've lost the polls in the
Signs won the poll.
Will you let me get to it? That's what I'm saying.
You said that I lost.
I'm talking to Tim, you dumbo.
You said Corbin.
No. Clayton, don't worry about it. His adrenaline is pumping as he remembers beating up the kid with scoliosis. So just let it slide, man.
So
let it slide.
Anyways, not only were you outvoted on the podcast, but you were outvoted in the community. Signs is scarier. Byron even admitted that it's probably made him scared more.
I think we're gonna have to roll that tape back. So I think the expert.
I'm pretty sure he said
I was scared.
That Signs was a more frightening movie, but the sense of isolation. So again, the concept of The Shining frightens him and scares him. But the movie itself didn't.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yes. Yes, yes,
So
yes.
Fucking
yes.
from a
So-
writing perspective, he was like, yeah, I mean, that's terrifying. Losing yourself, losing your mind, that's gotta be super scary. The movie itself, he didn't reference. It was the concept. It was,
wow.
I just heard him laugh at fucking aliens.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. All right, folks, that does it for this week's episode. We did a real quick intro so we could get right into it with Byron. If you like what we do and you want to support us, head over to nerdosphere.com patreon.com/the Nerdosphere, where you can support us. We got a bunch of different tiers. For $1 a month, guys, you get to vote on topics. You get the access to the Nerd Tea extra podcast where it's just us chit-chatting, shooting the shit. It's just $1 a month. Get a personal thank you from us. Get a PNG of our logo. And you get to help direct where we go with the show as far as voting on activities. You get to vote on content. You get to vote on topics. So just for $1. And then $5 a month, it amps up. So check it out if you like what we do. You can also support us by giving us a rating on iTunes. That really helps us out a lot. Throw up a 5-star rating and write a review if you are so inclined. We do have 1 or 2 to read, but I'm not going to do it now because I don't have it pulled up. We'll save it for next time. So that does it for this week. Check us out on facebook.com/the Nerdosphere. Find the Nerdosphere group page on Facebook inside groups. Just search for the Nerdosphere. We're on Twitter at NerdosphereCast, and be sure to go check out Kingdom. It's on Netflix now. Give it some love. You won't regret it. So we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
bye.
See ya.